This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
How does it feel?
Don't move. What did you mean by strength in the Force?
Exactly that.
If you were a Jedi, you know it's something you must exercise. Without training, it fades.
And that's what they told you?
I had to lose a lot of myself in order to become a Jedi. Even if I didn't know it at the time.
I'm sorry if you felt that way.
How could I feel any other way?
What happened here?
What do you see?
An explosion, then a battle. One versus many. His power extraordinary, his skills erratic.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Coffee with Kenobi. It is time to talk about the 6th episode of The Acolyte. The episode is titled Teach/Corrupt, and I have got one person to join me. If you've been listening to our coverage of The Acolyte this season, then you know who I am bringing on to be my co-pilot, my co-host, the one and only from Jedi News, James Burns. James, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Hey, how have you been this past week?
I've been really good. I've been looking forward to talking about with this episode with you. I'm definitely excited to hear what you think. We have not talked in advance about what we think about the episode. Yep. There's only, counting this, after this, there's only 2 episodes left. There's a lot to wrap up, a lot to be uncovered. So let's go ahead and kick it off. James, give me one word to talk about Teach/Corrupt and your overall thoughts on the episode.
Duplicitous. So the reason why I've chosen that word is because obviously there's a number of threads throughout the episode where everybody seems to be trying to double cross the other person. I mean, that's basically what the whole episode is. And when that's not going on, you've got Venestra, who's hidden what she's done from the Jedi Council, and she's having this conversation with, is it Mog? Yeah, it's Mog. And Mog was a bit surprised that she knew exactly the location where Soul and the other Jedi had gone to. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to potentially cause ripples in future episodes. I enjoyed it. I found it a little bit slow, especially compared to the previous episode, which was full on, all that fighting, all that non-stop action. And in this, we had no action at all.
All right. Well, my word is broken. These characters are broken. Even the characters like Soul that I found some respite and inspiration in, he is pretty broken too, just as broken. I did not like this episode. I found it hard to get through, and it seems that this is the way this season is going to go. And I'm looking forward to learning from you about this. Again, I take no pleasure in not liking these things. There's usually something that I can salvage in an episode. Mm-hmm. I had a really hard time with it in this one, except for one thing, and I know that I will talk about that.
Okay. Was there nothing that you particularly liked?
There was one thing I particularly liked. I can just have a no. I like Manti. I like Manny Jacinto's performance. I think he's dynamite. He could carry a series all by himself, Star Wars or otherwise. He's very charismatic. He's very committed to his role. He's very engaging, and I find him to be even though he's a very evil character in this series, I find him to be captivating, and I like his performance quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. He's very engaging, and I think Leslie Headland came out and said this week that when she saw his performance, they went away and rewrote some of the latter episodes to include more of him because his performance on screen was just so amazing.
I'm glad to hear that. I did not know that. I'm very, very glad to hear that. So I guess that would be my first one to talk about is his performance is so engaging. The way he manipulates Osha is disturbing
Yes.
and psychologically twisted, and he's like a predator, but he sells it. He sells it. There's not like you can see why Osha would give in to his very subtle but also very direct tactics. He's like in the natural world, a predator shows very appealing things to try to lure someone in before destroying them. And you get the sense that is happening here. While he talks about wanting, he wants the power of two. Given what we know about the history of the power of two, it's hard to believe he has anybody's interest in mind other than himself. But the way that it is executed and performed and told on screen is, to me, the most compelling part about this episode.
Do you think there's some sexual chemistry between the character of Osha and the character of the stranger? Because when he's in the water, he says, well, unless you're going to come and join me.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bit of I had to stop myself at that point thinking, well, hold on.
I've got a lot to say about that, but I'm going to try to save that because this is the only positive thing I'm going to say about the episode, but I'm absolutely going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just found that really interesting in terms of, I really liked the way that she walked to the water, picked up the lightsaber, and then I was waiting for him to react, and I didn't know whether he was going to jump out the water or he was going to, but it was very subtle. It was done very, very well. And I actually thought her performance at that point was very good.
It was. No, I believe me. I'm going to talk about it a lot, but I'm trying to at least have one thing I say positive. So I'll come back to it. I promise.
Okay. All right. No, that's fair. That's fair.
So what is, tell me the first thing that jumps out to you about it, or is that it? Is that what you want to talk about?
No, well, obviously we have to talk about the lightsaber whip. And I just hope that the amount of anticipation that they've put behind that moment, that's not all we see of it, because I'll be bitterly disappointed if that's the case. The way Vanessa used it, I thought was very, very clever. She sensed something, she took it out, she dealt with the threat very, very quickly and put the lightsaber light whip away. And I thought the effect was done very well. And I liked the other character who sort of had his hand on his lightsaber ready to try and deal with the threat, but obviously she was much quicker. I just hope we see more of her using it, because obviously it's been built up as this big, big thing, and we've never seen it before in live action. I just want to see more.
Is that the clip we saw in the trailer? Because remember, I didn't watch the last trailer.
Yeah, I think so. It's a bit difficult to tell from the way it's been cut, but I'm just hoping we see a little bit more of that.
If that is it, then what a massive missed opportunity. Because even though I know what it is, and I watched it a couple times, it's barely discernible that it's a whip. If anything, something shoots straight up in the air, and it's to kill a bug. And then after she does it, she kind of puts her lightsaber down and looks over at her companion. It's almost like hey, did you see that? Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
which is extremely un-Jedi-like. But I have found Vanessa Rowe to be one of the most disappointing characters in the history of on-screen Star Wars. She is one of the best characters in literary Star Wars. Absolutely dynamite. One of my favorite characters in the High Republic. In this, she is flat. She is emotionless. And even when she goes and finds these dead bodies, she doesn't run up to them. Like there is zero love or compassion there. If she's that stoic, then you shouldn't be a Jedi Knight. She is not a postcard for the Jedi Knight, because she doesn't react at all to Jeki's body. She doesn't to any of their bodies. She doesn't even look up to them. She doesn't go up. She doesn't close their eyes like you see in every show ever, where you close the person's eyes to give them some sort of a peace and ceremonially tell them goodbye. And at the very, very end, as a passing thought, get the bodies prepared for burial. This is even worse. No, it's not worse, but it's as bad.
At least they address that, though.
Yeah, after the fact, as a complete afterthought. These bodies are not treated like beings and companions and loved ones that have become part of the living force. They are treated like stuff. They're treated like stuff. And I watched it very carefully the second time. There's no emotional reaction. There's no running up to the body. There's no grieving. They're just like, let's prepare the bodies for burial. After all these things and walking around, not even going up to the bodies or investigating them, even if you don't want to touch them because you don't want to mess up the evidence. Are you kidding me? Like, that's so horrific to me that there's zero compassion.
Are we surprised that none of the bodies disappeared, as it were, as we've seen with other Jedi?
You have to learn that. Qui-Gon teaches Yoda and Obi-Wan how to do that.
Okay, because I thought that maybe one of them would have gone that way potentially, or would have learned that skill. But I
would have been annoyed if they did, because no one has learned that yet.
Okay, that's fine.
Is what we know so far. But so, am I overreacting to this dead body thing? Did it not bother you that they didn't?
It did, and it also bothered me that they didn't even go into Kelnaka's hut to see whether he was alive, because he was there too, and there was no mention of him. And I would have thought that there would be a reference. Well, did Kelnaka see it? Because that's why they were going there in the first place. And that whole story strand was just
a waste,
discarded. Yeah.
And the way that Jeki and Yord were treated and the way that we have reacted to them, there is zero reason to care about them in any of this series, because the characters don't.
The characters
Soul doesn't. Don't. Yeah. So why should we? The more I talk about it, the more angry I get. This is really upsetting.
Yeah, no, I can hear it in your voice. I can really hear it in your voice.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be like that, because, again, I don't enjoy it at all. It's just, as a person of faith, as a person who loves story and mythology, and who understands the cultural context of death and the power of death throughout the history of human civilization, if this is the Jedi way, it's no wonder the Jedi fell away. There's no excuse for it. It really bothers me.
What should have happened is Vanestra or one of the other Jedi should have knelt down and as you said, covered the eyes. And had they have done that with just one of them, just with Jeki maybe, that would have been enough. Yeah, no, I agree.
Maybe what a beautiful setting. What if Vanestra took off her robe and covered Jeki?
Yeah.
How beautiful would that be? That's all I need. That's all I need. I'm not asking for something different. Well, I am, but I mean, just basic human decency.
Yeah.
And seeing Jeki dead like that with her eyes open, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But we care more than they do, and that bothers me.
Yeah.
All right, so I've overreacted enough.
No, it's all good. Look, listen, there are things that bother certain people in different ways, and I think humility and the way that you deal with death is really, really important. And it's always been dealt with pretty well, apart from Order 66. It's always been dealt with really, really well in Star Wars. So I'm surprised there wasn't that moment when she knelt down, closed Jeki's eyes. That's all it needed. It just needed that 2 or 3 second shot, and that would have been enough. And that would have said and conveyed the whole sympathetic nature of the Jedi.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. It was rather lackluster.
And Order 66 was portrayed poorly because it's supposed to. Because it's mass murder and execution that causes the Emperor to be in power, and it's referred to for the past 25 years.
Correct. And you wouldn't expect any of the clones to go over and to close their eyes or to cover them up, because they were instructed specifically to kill them in cold blood, which is what they did.
They had no agency. They had no choice. These characters had a choice. All right, is it my turn or yours? I think it's mine.
Yeah, it's your turn. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm glad one of us thinks so. Now, again, I do appreciate that people have said that they have appreciated that, even though it's not something that is working for me, they have been very encouraging about how I am trying to discuss it. Because I'm purely coming at this from a story perspective. From a story perspective. My next one, you mentioned earlier, this whole, is there sexual tension? There is. And it's a problem as well. Like, if Osha is attracted to this man that she saw snap the neck of her childhood friend in front of her, that killed her new friend Jeki, who she had a bond with, who corrupted her sister to become a murderer, a cold-blooded murderer in her own right.
Yep. If
she is attracted to this person, then there is no reason for me to care about this person. As far as empathizing with her, how can you empathize with someone who is so broken, which was my word, that they would be attracted to a person who is He's a beautiful man. He's ripped. He's charming. He's persuasive. He's great. I don't blame her if it was purely just a physical thing. But all the things he has done and all the corrupting things that he has done and the murder he has performed, and plus he's got her prisoner.
Mhm.
Hey, if you want to escape, you're the one holding the weapon. True. If you want to escape, swim against the tide. So she's captured. So this is like, what's that psychological phenomenon where the person kidnapped falls in love with their captors? Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is
That's
it
exactly
that?
this.
Maybe. Yeah, that's what it is. And again, Star Wars is supposed to be about hope. There's supposed to be something good. If they want to tell that kind of a dark story, they certainly are allowed to, and they certainly should. And I don't have to like everything. But it bothers me, again, as I've said this entire season. Give me a reason to root for Osha where she is consistently a character. You can be dynamic and change and grow, but still have some sort of a core. But her core completely disappeared because this man is obviously seducing her in more ways than one.
But I think
so. No, I didn't. It's a problem. Is it done well? It's done beautifully.
but he's doing it
their
on
chemistry
purpose,
is
though.
great. Of course he is. Yeah, but she's fallen for it. I think
Yes.
if you're strong, if you're strong and who you are, which we were led to believe that she was, you're not falling for it. So are the performances great? Is it written well? Is it executed well? Very much. Very well. I'm just saying, for me, it makes it so much harder for me to root for Osha in this context.
Look, but I think he's doing exactly what he wants to do. His single vision is the power of two, and he'll do anything that he can to achieve that. He knows that Osha has the ability to potentially be a Jedi, and has those skills, and he knows that he can turn those skills into evil effectively.
Yep.
So he's using every single trick in his book. When he's coming, or I think he's actually in the water, and he says to her, "I'm not reading your mind." Well, of course he's reading her mind. Of course he's planting all of these things into her mind to make her become more susceptible to his power, and to bring her on board so that he can potentially unlock the power of two. That's what he wants.
Yep, he does. So then we have to ask ourselves, is it fair as an audience to assume that we know the direction that the storytellers are taking the story? Is it fair to us to put upon their intent as an audience? No, it is not fair. I do not know the intent.
Mhm.
I do not think it was done or created to show that this is a good thing. But it is a titillating thing. And there is a part of the audience that, whatever the reason, they're drawn into that. And that's fine. I'm saying that for me, I find that to be a disturbing recipe, because I don't think they portray it as a positive thing, but they also kind of do. And that's pretty tricky for me. That makes sense?
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see it. From my point of view, I think that he is deliberately trying to manipulate her and trying to get her to turn. And the whole thing
is it portrayed as a positive thing? Because if it is, that's irresponsible. If it's shown as toxic and bad, then it's genius.
I think it's being conveyed as being a negative thing. Because we see the flip side when we cut to Soul and May, and we can see how distressed Soul is, and there's some really good acting by him in terms of his performance, and we can see how gutted he is about what's just happened. And I'd like to know how quickly he knows, or how quickly he knew that it wasn't Osha and it was May. I think he caught on pretty early, and I
can't pinpoint when he did. I really don't know.
No.
Can you? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I personally, I think it was before the pip droid stuff, which I thought was done really, really well, and I actually liked the way that they used Basil a little bit. Although I thought at one point Basil was going to use Pip to go to Soul to say, "Hey, do you realize what's going on here?" But that never sort of really came about.
I wish it would have.
Yeah, because why else was
a plot
Basil there?
Yeah, Basil's just a plot device.
Correct.
Yeah.
didn't achieve anything having Basil there, apart from, you know, that little skirmish with May where he squirts oil in her eye and stuff.
Yeah.
It didn't do an awful lot, but maybe that was the whole point. Maybe that was to throw us off the scent.
What did you think of her resetting Pip to factory settings?
That was very quick. She's got a lot of knowledge of how to do that sort of thing, which I thought was impressive. Now, I would get it that OSHA knows how to do that because OSHA works with Pip droids all the time. But I don't think May working and training with Himar or whoever she was training with would have necessarily learnt those skills, but maybe I'm wrong.
This is going to sound crazy. I found that when she did the factory setting, is it Pip, P-I-P?
Yes.
When she did the factory reset on that Pip droid, which the last episode before OSHA randomly says, I love you to an animated Palm Pilot.
Yes.
I found her resetting those factory settings to be more disturbing of a death than anything that happened in episode 5.
Right.
Because I mean, seriously, more than the death of the 2 Jedi. Because OSHA said how much she loves the droid. He's been her companion this entire thing, or it has been her companion the entire time. And then her sister, who knows how much this thing means to her, probably, resets it because it frustrates her, killing it, wiping away its memory and existence. I found it to be awful and icky, and I feel like I need to take a shower after I watch it. Now, it's probably it's silly because it's a droid, but we've been given more emotional attachment to this droid than any of the other characters in this.
Yep.
So I was really, it showed me again how horrible May is. What a contemptuous person she is. And I still maintain she shows a lot of sociopathic tendencies.
Yes. Which makes sense because she was trained by the stranger who has all of those tendencies too. And yeah, absolutely. And we see those same traits in Maul, in Vader, in all of those other characters.
Right. So it was haunting. It was haunting because again, if we're supposed to somewhat empathize or sympathize with May and feel bad for her because of her upbringing and she's been fallen on bad mentors and it's corrupted her. She said that from the beginning, and then she's just wiping out this thing that means so much to her sister, which is sort of like an entity. That haunted me. And I don't know, it's just crazy. It haunted me more than the last episode, which is a problem.
Do you think we're going to find out this season exactly what happened with those 2 girls?
Well, it better. Every episode they keep saying, hey, well, let's talk about Soul now. Okay. Tell me about what you thought of Soul in this episode.
Well, I liked his performance when he initially got on the ship. I thought he came over very well, and I liked the way he went to hug OSHA. I thought that came across really well, although that didn't seem, to me, that's maybe the point he realized, because there was nothing being given back at that point. She's just standing there. He's hugging her, and I didn't feel any love coming the other way.
It was awkward.
And
which
I think
there wouldn't be.
Correct.
May.
Correct. And I think he would have felt that, I hope. And at that point, he knew that something was up. He was really grappling with what had just happened and also grappling with what had happened 16 years ago. That's still playing on his mind very, very much. And it really sounds like there's something big and major that he needs to get off of his plate effectively, because he keeps going on about that. And at the end of the episode, we say, right, I'm going to tell you and you're going to listen. So it's going to be a big revelation. And we know it is because it's been built up to this huge, huge thing. I liked his performance for the most. There was one point where he's standing in front of that screen and it seemed to go on for about 20 minutes. And I just was like, cut it. It's enough. Cut. And it just kept going on and on and on and on and on. And I thought, okay, are they filling for time? Is he counting in his head? It was too long. It was far, far too long.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What did you think about how he had May trapped at the end? That whole scene.
They're in a spaceship. I don't know where he thought May was going to go. At that point, it's the word that I use, duplicity, because at that point he's turned on her and now he's trying to control her. He's being exactly what the stranger is being with Osha, and now he's doing the same thing. He's as bad as he is. And I appreciate that she's got some quite decent Jedi skill that she's learnt, but so has he, and they could probably contain each other. So I don't know whether it was necessarily to restrain her, and I felt a little bit uneasy about the restraints.
It was so Soul has been my favorite character this entire thing.
Yep.
I have empathized with him. He seems the most dynamic. He clearly has pain. I thought the performance was terrific.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell this is the episode. This is the moment where he is broken, like my word.
Yes, absolutely.
And his internal conflict, which he has clearly struggled with, which he did in the last episode when he nearly killed this assassin, show that he's got some darkness in him, which he is not proud of.
No.
But he's also running from because he's not owned it. He's not talked to the High Council about it. We learn all this stuff.
Yep.
I get all that. At the end, he had to restrain her because she's dangerous and deadly, and she's killed his companions. She's a Sith acolyte, perhaps. I still don't know that we can fully say the stranger is a Sith, because anybody can say they're a Sith. Doesn't mean that you actually are. Kylo Ren wasn't a Sith.
No.
But here is the thing. This woman, May, who is dangerous and is not someone that I find redeemable yet, and I will think it will take a story miracle for that to happen. He restrains her, which you have to do because she would kill him.
Yep.
But the way she is laying down and he is hovering over her when she's completely defenseless, over the top of her and then like towards her knees, that was so creepy and so disturbing and haunting. He suddenly became no better than the stranger.
Yep.
And he was very threatening, and you're going to listen. Like, he could have put her in like a restraining cell, with like the light projection that's sort of like the jail cell itself, and he could have talked to her. But forcing her to listen, forcing her to do that, and hovering over her like a predator, I found that to be so disturbing and haunting and messed up that I would think that could be psychologically damaging to people. And it really bothered me. And it bothered me that I'm like, oh, geez, now Soul is it's hard to root for too. So that was really distressing. I found that really disturbing. And
I think it was deliberately, though, because of the fact that he's got this huge burden that he's been carrying around for 16 years, and the other Jedi that share that secret are now dead. He's the only one that knows exactly what happened.
Oh, I think it's a choice. And I think it was supposed to make us feel icky and creepy. Yeah. But again, who am I supposed to root for in this series?
Yeah. Well, at that point,
it's only broken
root
people.
For May. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and why would you root for May when she's done all the things that she's done?
Yeah.
It's like you have to pick the lesser of the two evils. That haunts me.
There's no one really to root for at the end of the episode, because we can see where Osha's going, and we can see where May and Soul are going. We know what the stranger wants to achieve. And then on the other hand, you've got Venestra, who's landed on this planet, is trying to work out what her next move is. It's been suggested that Soul is the one that potentially killed all of these Jedi,
or that Venestra tortured the stranger with her whip.
Yeah, but we don't. Venestra doesn't really say, "Oh no, it can't be Soul. It's definitely not. Don't be ridiculous. It can't be Soul." She just
lets quite an accusation. She says that again. That's so such a weird, awkward thing. But maybe there's more to that. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Listen, I'm guessing Venestra knows what happened 16 years ago.
Oh, of course,
because she seems to be,
she's hiding something too.
Yeah.
But so this is nothing like the Venestra from the books.
No, agreed. And that's worrying, actually, because the Venestra from the books was really good, really, really positive.
One of the standards.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that she redeems herself before the end of the series.
It's gonna take a lot. The only other thing I want to talk about with this is the end with the helmet and Osha putting on the helmet. Talk to me about that.
So I liked the way that they finally explained what the metal was and what it could achieve, because, that needed in my opinion, a line last week so that people
Agreed.
understood what was going on. And it could have just been between those two unnamed Jedis turning to each other and saying, cortosis. That's all it needed, just one word.
Yep.
But there was nothing. And I liked that we found out that the reason why the stranger is hiding here is because it's a resource for this metal. And I think Leslie.
Oh, is that what it is? When she looks up at the
she looks up and she can see the metal all there. And
it
Leslie
also was
Headland's
like the scar on his back.
Yes. And Leslie Headland's come out and said that it's not Achtu, which a lot of people assumed it was.
Looks like it. Mm-hmm.
But it's deliberately an unknown planet because of this is where the metal is very, very rare. It's only found in very, very few places. This is one of them. They don't want to name the planet for the moment, which I get. And maybe it's going to, feed into other stuff that's coming down the pipe later. Mm-hmm. So I quite like that. That sort of worked for me. He was egging her on to pick up that helmet right from the get-go.
Uh-huh.
And he walks away and she obviously goes and takes the apple. It's but it's classic. It's Adam and Eve. It's Snow White. It's all of those things that we know from the Bible to the first animated classic. So So we're seeing that. We're seeing that temptation, that forbidden fruit. She takes it. She puts it on. We don't know what she's feeling. We hear her breathing, and then it cuts to black.
It was cool. A cool ending.
It was a very cool ending. And like episode 4, before we saw the stranger, it left me wanting more again. Which I've only felt really at the end of episode 4 and at the end of episode 6. I haven't really felt, right, tell me more now, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's going to be interesting to see or to understand what she's feeling behind that helmet.
If this helmet and the cortosis causes sensory deprivation, meaning all you have is you and the Force, and also, by the way, what you bring with you. So it's like, well, then it doesn't do anything if you've got all these things. But maybe he's able to commit these unspeakable acts when he's wearing the helmet because he's not acknowledging any of his senses except for his power through the Force, which is fueled by rage because it's a dark side.
Correct. Yep.
So I kind of like that idea of this helmet helps me to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very sinister and creepy. It's got this massive grin, like it looks very serial killer-ish, or like a horror film. The music again completely sends that message home.
Music is brilliant.
It is brilliant. Absolutely. So if at the end of this, the fact that she's tempted to put it on also bothered me because I never got the sense she was that broken and confused. She seemed pretty put together. So that's hard for me to kind of follow those breadcrumbs.
Yeah, but he's feeding her. He's feeding all of this. He's deliberately going after all of her insecurities. And when she ignites the saber, when they're outside, that was exactly what he wanted her to do. He wanted her to show that rage.
So she's that mad because she failed that she's going to cut off his head. I haven't seen enough to show, unless she's got it suppressed, but we haven't seen any examples of suppressed rage. I mean, that sequence I found awkward. It didn't work. Did that sequence work for you? I mean, again, I know what they're trying to do, and they did it, but the motivation is still lacking. And if it's only because you're omitting information, I need more.
That's the bit about this series that I find the most awkward, is that the lack of information at certain times. It needs a little bit more exposition, and a word here, a line there, and the story would flow so much easier.
That'd be great.
And that's all it needs, and it would improve it so much.
Mm-hmm.
I find that frustrating because if you or I had read that script in advance, we probably would have said, right, you need to say this word here or that word there, or say this line, and the whole thing would have just flowed.
Yep. You've got to connect it. I think if her putting that on could be kind of neat, and the fact that she sees nothing except for a little slit. I kept expecting him to jump out and attack her. It felt like something from a Halloween film, and a little haunting. And the idea that this good person has been completely corrupted by this man who has seduced her mentally. and with his charm and his lack of clothing. Again,
Yeah, well, I was going to say, and
interesting odd
physically.
choices. Yeah.
And physically, you have to say that because of what he knew exactly what he was doing by taking his clothes off.
So in the performance, in the execution, in the direction, all effective.
Yes.
I found it as a viewer uncomfortable. I don't have to be comfortable. I could choose not to watch it. I'm going to watch it because I want to see what's going to happen, and it's Star Wars. And
I think that was deliberate. I think this episode was deliberately
to tear you
done.
down so it can build you up.
Correct.
Oh, I agree.
It was done to make us feel uncomfortable, and I think that will get some redemption in hopefully in the next couple of episodes. Bearing in mind that we're almost at the end of the story.
Because I keep thinking, well, maybe it will get better, but it's not. It's getting harder for me. Again, I am not comfortable with that. Not from a morality perspective, but just because it's not because of morality, but because I need to see, like you just mentioned so well, I need to see reasons and rationale to explain it. Because I do like the metaphor of the two of them walking on that rocky beach. There's all this green next to them, but they're walking on rocks. They're walking on you can't build your house on rocks. That's what they're trying to do. And it's going to be broken. There's not going to be a solid foundation for it. That's a powerful metaphor. There's life all around them, the water, the green, those beautiful little platypus looking things.
Yes.
Creatures. They're purely there to remind us that there is good in the world because we don't see it in this episode by any of the characters. Vernestra, Sol, Osha, May, the stranger, none of them. So there's some effective metaphors there, but it's tricky for me. So I don't really have much else to add about the episode. I'm getting ready to give it a letter grade, but what about you?
Yeah, look, I liked some of the light-hearted moments. I liked those new creatures. I think they were cute and fun. And when I watched it a second time, that actually brought a smile to my face because it's a really, really dark episode.
Yes.
And I'm thrilled that you made the decision not to share this with your son, because I think this is one of the darkest episodes of Star Wars I've seen it probably ever. So from that point of view, that's a positive. In terms of a grade, it's difficult. It's really difficult. There are parts that I liked. It was a hard episode to watch because of the content, but I think that was deliberate. I'd probably give it a C+.
Okay. That's fair. So everything I mentioned, Sol at the end hovering over her, restraining her, not showing, he's completely gone dark to a place that means you're broken. You're broken. If you're as good as we've been led to believe, Star Wars is about hope. Star Wars is about believing in things you can't see. Star Wars is about found family. This is a broken family. There is no hope in this episode. There's no hope in this series. There's no source for optimism. The Force is not a guiding light, but an obstacle to be overcome or to oppress because people are using their perception of the Force, as the stranger keeps telling us, to manipulate people. So it's like nihilistic. There's nothing. There's no order. There's only chaos. There's no direct plan or purpose or hope. There's no unity. There's only people lying to each other.
Yeah,
I'm giving this a D-.
Okay.
As I've never given anything Star Wars that low of a grade. Again, I don't enjoy feeling that way. I'm going to be critical. I'm going to be intellectually honest with how I feel. And if other people like it and for them it's an A and the best Star Wars they've seen, I couldn't be happier for you. I wish I felt that way. I want to, but I don't. And that's okay. Life will move on. It's not going to affect my love of this saga. Coffee with Kenobi is always going to cover Star Wars and love it. But this episode, especially the way it ends with Sol hovering over her, I don't want that image in my brain. It did what it was supposed to do, but it's not for me.
Yeah, look, there's been a cloud hanging over the series, which is the events from 16 years ago that we still don't know what happened. And that might explain Sol's motivation and the anguish that we see between May and Osha and some of the other things that we've seen during the 6 episodes we've seen so far. It's very, very different to other Star Wars shows that have come before on Disney Plus, where pretty much all of them have some form of hope. There's always something that they're striving for, whether it be a part to fix a hyperdrive, or whether it be, rescuing somebody because that's a positive thing to do and taking them out of a dangerous situation. We haven't really got a lot of that here. So there's something more going on. And I read some stuff this week about potentially, is this setting up the Rule of Two? Is this setting up Plagueis and other things that we've only read about or heard about as a line in The Phantom Menace, for example? This has to be taking us somewhere. There has to be a point to the show in that it's got to take us on a journey. So it's definitely taking us on a journey. The journey is definitely not leading us to hope at the moment. We don't know where it's leading us to.
Trauma. Jackie, Remember Jackie's line that we debated, or not debated, but we were like, wait, I don't get this line. You're defined by what you survive. So Star Wars in the Acolyte is not about hope, it's about trauma. And that is not why I buy into Star Wars.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
No, I can watch ER for that or something else.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, I hear you, and I don't disagree. I'm hoping that there will be some redemption. I'm really hoping that there'll be some redemption towards the end.
Hope so too, and I will wave that flag high if it happens.
Yeah, because we've never had a Star Wars series that doesn't end with some kind of hope at the end.
Right. That's right. Well, I hope we get it.
Yeah.
The hope that I have is that is always fulfilled is you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate you letting me sit in the chair and you counsel me on this Star Wars series. I always learn from you and appreciate you and your coverage. Please let us know what's going on with you and Jedi News.
Well, there's so much happening at the moment. There's all of this, the Acolyte, and then there is so many other Star Wars news items occurring right now. So you can find all the Star Wars news 24/7, 365 days of the year at JediNews.com. Please come and say hello. Find us on social media. Just search for Jedi News Network. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for all that you do and for allowing me as well to sort of, play off of each other. And we do it very well. And it's great because people don't realize that we do this off the air too.
All the time. But, we deliberately hadn't talked about this episode. And we've got very, very similar thoughts on it, which is good. We do. Yeah. Thank you again for that. And please, everyone, I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this. Please get your top 5 ready for this episode and for night. On Monday, we're going to have a big CWK Live at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time, where we're going to talk about these. So get your top 5 ready for each episode. It'll be a glorious top 10. Really looking forward to your thoughts and really appreciate you all joining James and I to talk about the Acolyte. Thank you again, everybody, so much. Remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.